first gladiators were slaves who fought at a funeral of a distinguished aristocrat named Junius Brutus Pera in 264 BC to honor his memory. Most gladiators were slaves who had rigorous training, high-energy diets, and expert medical attention. Gladiators were staged by wealthy aristocrats as a means of displaying their power and influence over the lower branches of society. At first, leading Romans did not like the idea of big public shows on a regular basis. They feared a riot or protests would occur during an event because of how many people were together at once. Games became popular, so leading Romans decided to sponsor the games. They thought that the public games, controlled by patricians, could be key to maintaining public order.
Gladiator Games originally started out as religious festivals. Most gladiators were slaves. Some gladiators were free-born volunteers, but if you were a gladiator, you were always given the social status of a slave. First, gladiators were slaves, and they were made to fight to the death. Gladiators were paired against opponents who had different fighting styles. The fighting styles were called Murmillo, Thrax, and Hoplomachus. Murmillo had a large, oblong shield that covered his body from his shoulder to his calf. Thrax, on the other hand, carried a small square shield that covered only his torso, and Hoplomachus carried an even smaller round one. Members of the same fighting styles had the same trainer. During the games, the people were seated according to social status. Exotic animals were used in the games to make the games more interesting.
There are many famous gladiators throughout Rome. Spartacus was possibly the most popular. He was a prisoner of war and was sent to Ludus Gladiator Training Center to be trained. He was a slave from Thrace who fought in the Roman army. He was assisted from gladiators from Gaul during his rebellion. Another famous gladiator was Flamma. He was a gladiator who fought 34 times and won 21 of those battles. Some famous gladiators were Roman emperors. For example, Emperor Commodus Calga and Emperor Geta both fought as gladiators during their rule. Our story is about the legendary battle between Priscus and Verus, who both fought for so long that they are both deemed victorious. Because of their courage, their lives were spared and they were freed.
The Gladiator Games was a conflict between individual gladiators who would face off in pairs against each other, where they would battle until a clear winner was decided. The sponsor and the emperor would be given the overall choice of whether the defeated gladiator would live or die. To show that you were defeated, the downed gladiator would stick up a finger to represent that he was at the will of his opponent. There were only two ways to enter the Colosseum. You either exited by the winner's gate, the Porta Triumphus, or the loser's gate. The winner's gate, the gladiator would leave with a reed of palm branches around his head, and the loser would be leaving the arena either dead, or he would leave the arena with his head bowed in shame and no respect. The crowd's vote were represented through having a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thumbs up to live, thumbs down he dies. This greatly influenced the choice of the sponsors and the emperor. It was much more cost effective to keep a gladiator alive than kill him every time the crowd thought so, but it was considered generous to kill a gladiator every now and then. The more gladiators someone had showing at an event, the more power he had.
The story of Priscus and Verus is about two gladiators that were great friends but were forced to battle each other to the death. Both of them were trained in the same school until Priscus was moved to another. These men were trained just about the time that the Colosseum was being completed. It was important for Emperor Titus to impress everyone with the opening day of the Colosseum because many were starting to believe that he had fallen out of favor with the gods after the city of Pompeii was destroyed during a volcanic eruption and much of Rome had been destroyed because of a fire. Verus was fighting in the main event. He did not know who his opponent was, just that Titus had personally requested him. He would be astonished to see that it was his long-lost best friend, Priscus. During the battle, Verus lost his shield to Priscus, who in respect threw down his own. Later in the battle, when Priscus lost his sword, Verus threw down his sword, and they battled with their hands using only brute strength. Having watched both men fight valiantly, Titus ended the battle. It was the only time in gladiator history both men were declared victors. The emperor set out wooden swords, which were symbols of freedom, and victory palms to both men. They had won their freedom and had a feeling of glory that only a select few would ever experience. Verus had won his freedom. He was also perhaps the most beloved man in all of Rome. Power and riches undoubtedly awaited him, but rather than stick around and enjoy it, he humbly made his way back to Mosea in search of his long-lost family.
Let the battle of Priscus and Verus begin.
Enough! Both warriors have fought valiantly. For your bravery, courage, will, and honor, you both have been rewarded your freedom.
Return to the Mac. Get up what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed instead of getting on the internet and checking a new hit. Me get up, first shot, come strut walking. A little bit of humble, a little bit of cautious. Somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby's for the game. Nope, nope, y'all can't copy.